the only one of his kind, so he decided to make a wife for Adam. God took one of Adam's ribs and used it to make the first woman, whose name was Eve. Adam and Eve lived in a beautiful paradise that God had created called the Garden of Eden. There were many animals to talk to and play with, and all sorts of different fruit trees to eat from. Two of these trees were very special: the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam and Eve that he could eat as much fruit from the tree of life as they wanted, but warned them that they must never eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. One day, Eve was walking alone in the garden when a serpent whispered to her from a tree. The serpent asked Eve, "You and Adam eat from all the trees in the garden, but never the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why don't you eat the fruit from this tree?" "God has forbidden it," Eve replied. "If we eat the fruit or even touch it, we will die." The serpent hissed, "You won't die. God doesn't want you to eat from the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because you will become like him if you do, and know good from evil." Eve looked at the forbidden fruit, saw that it looked fresh and delicious. Believing the serpent's lie, that she would gain God's wisdom, she plucked a piece of fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and took a bite. Seeing that the fruit tasted delicious, she found Adam and told him he should eat the fruit too. "But God has forbidden it," Adam said. "He said that we would die if we ate the fruit." Eve explained to Adam what the serpent had told her and about becoming as wise as God after eating the fruit. Seeing that Eve had not died from eating the fruit, Adam took a piece and ate it too. After they ate the forbidden fruit, they looked at each other and they realized they were naked, and they felt ashamed. They turned away from each other and sewed together leaves from the garden to cover their bodies. When they saw that God was coming, Adam and Eve felt guilty for disobeying him. They were afraid to face him, so they tried to hide. But God already knew that they had eaten the forbidden fruit. He was very angry and disappointed. Adam tried to blame Eve for making him eat the fruit, and Eve blamed the serpent for deceiving her. But they both had still disobeyed God. God punished the serpent by taking away God punished Adam and Eve by banishing them from the Garden of Eden. Their lives would be difficult outside of paradise, and they would have to work very hard just to survive. So, we'll kind of go over Adam and Eve a little bit more about what happened there, but I want you to think about the rules your parents give you. And God gave them, really, one rule that we talk about there. One rule, and that was not to eat fruit, okay, from a certain tree. And they let Eve let the serpent talk her into it, and she ate it. Have you ever been given a rule from your parents? I'm sure you have. We have rules at our house. And have you let other people maybe talk you into doing something that you know you shouldn't be doing, but it sounded like fun, or maybe you just felt pressure to do it? I think that's kind of what happened with Eve there. And she was tempted. She was tempted because she thought she could be like God. She could know as much as God by just eating this fruit. And that's hard, to be tempted and not do things that you know is not right all the time. But we have to also think why there are rules. God made these rules to protect them so that they could stay in paradise, so they didn't have to live in a harsh world. So that was his only rule, to protect his children, to protect Adam and Eve. As parents, your parents make rules too to protect you. And not because we like to not be fun, but it's to protect you. And that's what he was trying to do with Adam and Eve. So even though they knew it was wrong to disobey God, Adam and Eve gave in to that temptation. And they had to face the consequences of their actions, which was they could no longer live in the Garden of Eden. They could no longer live in paradise and have plenty of food, plenty of water, no No sadness, no illness, nothing. It was basically heaven on earth is what the Garden of Eden was. And they had everything they wanted or could need. So we as people, we as kids and adults, we have to resist this too. Resist doing bad things, even if it seems like it would be fun or that we might get something good in return. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing that we should do it. I always try to remember that good things never come from doing bad things. So when we don't do what we're supposed to do, other people will be angry and disappointed in us. I know that when my kids do something bad, I do get angry and I do get disappointed. And I know my parents can vouch for the same thing for me. And I know that as parents, we can let our kids down too. So just remember to try to do the best you can about doing what is right and doing what your parents ask. And furthermore, we will mess up. I mean, we're not perfect. I've messed up a lot. I know you guys will mess up, and that's okay. But we need to learn from it, and we need to admit when we're wrong. If you remember in the story, Adam and Eve hid. They tried to hide that they did something bad. Even though God already knew, they tried to hide. Try to keep out of trouble because they were afraid of what he was going to do. And sometimes it's best to just confess up. So fess up to what you've done wrong. Say that you've done wrong. And I promise you won't get as much trouble as if you just pretend that you didn't do it and try to hide and make a bigger and bigger lie over something. So when we think of Adam and Eve, I want you to think about, they were the first. They were the first man and woman on earth. And that they had a beautiful paradise called the Garden of Eden. But they also were tempted and they gave in to temptation. They made the first sin. And for us, we get tempted too. And that we have to do our best to resist this. As we build a closer relationship to God, it is easier to do that. But know if you're having a hard time with something, try to say a prayer and know what your parents would want you to do. Know what God would want you to do. And do your best to resist that temptation. Okay? We'll be back next week. And I can't wait to speak with you then. You guys have a great week, and I will see you soon. Bye.